the stuff people bring escorts to, when escorts are doing the actual job they say they're doing. When you heard about escort, it's like, well, you're paying me for my time. Whatever happens thing, it's like, we can go to dinners, and you're like, yeah. I used to drive them. I used to drive them, and I'll tell you what, they weren't going to any galas. They were going in the front of a house I thought was abandoned to get fucked by a guy whose arm is always broke or has polio.
You used to drive hookers?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was
what
a wacky
does that make
job.
you in the pimp hierarchy? Were you like you were a wheelman?
Wheelman, just but
Big J,
technically they had to protect them. Protecting them in like the strippers more. They were all like strippers and prostitutes for the most part. But the strippers was a scarier job because you have to go in and like make sure everything's like kind of okay.
Oh, you did like the bachelor party guy who like went in and like counted the money?
Yeah. The prostitutes where you just drive up out front and they go in and they'll be like, if all goes great, I'll be, it's supposed to be there for like an hour. They're like, I should be out in 15 minutes. And like they usually would. But the one time I drove someone outside of Pennsylvania, it was outside of Philly. I drove a girl one time and like we picked her. And like, this is also the thing you get to see, like this is not, like this guy's definitely not going to be happy. When you're driving someone out, I picked them up and I was like, unless there's no way this guy picked her. This is like before like internet was everything. So you were going on like a Yellow Pages call or like, I guess like the
you
back
had the
of like
Rhino in the
Philadelphia
car.
Weekly
You had
or
a
something.
Bob and Rocksteady in the car. Do you guys ever get caught in sex traffic?
I don't know. I did it.
If it were bumper to bumper, that would be sex traffic.
That would be sex traffic. Sex traffic. But I drove this girl. I knew she was like, I'm like, this guy's not going to like her. She was like, we drove to this nice neighborhood and this girl was like gothed out. Like big, heavy set chick, real milky skin. It was just a look that I'm certain the guy who lives here was not going for. And she goes,
are you sure you weren't trying to hog, being like, this guy's not going to be into you? You should actually just pull over.
Let me get you away from all this.
That's what I did when I was catering. You're going to take one of the palms. You know what I mean? If I'm driving a hooker, I'm going to go, come on, how about a kiss? Of one kiss. They're never going to know. Give me a little smidge.
The first girl I ever drove, well, I'll go back to that in a second. But this girl, she went inside she went to the guy's house. And I'm just waiting in the car. And then she comes back like 3 minutes later.
What?
And she goes, he said that I'm not what he was expecting and blah. And he's sending me what I was like, I saw coming. And she goes, and now no matter what, the guy's got to pay X amount for me.
Yeah.
For the drive, or whatever it was, like $25. That meant the world to me at the time, for sure. And so she was like, he's not, she goes, I was like, so he just gave you like the, the cancel money or whatever. And she was like, no, he wouldn't give me any money at all. And I was like, shit. And I just gotta hedge the bets. I'm like, what does this asshole look like? Because you're waiting to hear like, I'm like, hey, so I can go find him. But like, I'm really just asking. I'm like, is this worth $25 for me to go knock on this guy's door? And she was like, he's like this little like nerdy whatever guy. So I was like, oh, good. So I knock on the door, and I was like, and she kind of came with me, which I didn't think was a good idea. And he opens the door. With kind of like, I don't want like trouble thing. And I was like, no, man, I just gotta like, you're supposed to give like $50. I guess like 25 for each of us or something like that. And he was like, he's like, oh, well, I don't, he was basically being a dick. He was like, I don't have the money. And I'm like, buddy, you got to give it. And then she just busts the door open and started like unhooking his VCR. And she goes, well, I'm taking something with me or something like that. Like I got her not to do that ultimately, but like she was planning on walking out there with something. And then having to drive a rejected hooker home is such a hilarious like conversation.
Yeah.
She's like, actually, I probably went in there with a bad attitude because I didn't want to fuck him. Like, sure. Yeah, sweetheart, you got it. But
I'm glad I didn't get his VCR. I didn't even fucking want it, dude.
The first girl I ever drove, I remember being like impressed by her because she was just pretty. One,
It'd be funny if you're like 12 and this is just your paper route.
I was 18, I think.
Damn.
18 or 19. I only did this for a very short amount of time.
How'd you get this gig?
My friend Ernie was dating a girl whose dad was just like probably like weird connected shit or something like that. And it was like they had a guy who like just ran stripper. It was supposed to just be strippers ultimately. And like, you just go there and whatever. I found out very quick because the guy was like, all the other drivers for this company were like old men. I remember asking the guy one time, like, how the fuck?
Yeah.
Is like, am I the only? And I feel like I'm in danger a lot. And he was like, well, he goes, they have guns. Like, you don't have a gun? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, do you want one? And I was like, no. And he's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, dude, because I get too nervous. So I was like, I'm going to pull out way too early because I'll be nervous. It's always like 15 guys, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I've had him say things like, you're supposed to stop us if we do anything. And I'd be like, yeah, me and this guy are supposed to stop. I'd be in a circle already pointing at everybody. Trying to John Wick both hands. Yeah, it was terrifying.
At a bachelor party in the Poconos.